welcome back to Contrastly. My name's Simon Plant and today we're going to be looking at lighting effects. Okay, so before we get into the actual tutorial, I'll just give you a bit of background about this image because you probably don't know what this guy's doing or where he is, and I think it's important that you get a little bit of the background information. This is a friend of mine I've known for many years, and he's really into what we call Northern Soul, which is soul music, a rare soul music that was very popular in the 70s. And part and parcel of all that is they do some very creative dancing, lots of jumps and etc. It's hard to explain, but if you go onto my blog plantphoto.com, you'll find a post there with a video of behind the scenes of the shoot, and it'll give you a bit more idea of what I'm talking about. And I was involved a little bit in this scene many years ago, and they often these dances would take place in these big kind of ballrooms, and they would go on all night or all day. And so what I wanted to do with this picture was actually capture not only my friend's fantastic dancing, but recreate some of the kind of atmosphere and the location as I remember it. Hence the background here, this quite grand ballroom. So that was all fine. I didn't have a background image that was really suitable, so I decided to go and get a stock image, which is what I did. And this was what I kind of had to begin with. Let me just open these up a minute. So this is kind of the background. I've had to darken it down to match the foreground shot. And what it really needed, once I put some of the lighting in from the shot, I decided it needed a little bit more atmosphere, because once Terry was in there, we had a kind of light coming from up here and a light coming from the front, just to kind of add a bit of fill. And we needed to sort of create that mood. So this is the image I had, but it wasn't quite enough. So what I did was to go in and create some my own lighting, and that's what we're going to show you today in this video. Now I've reduced the size of this file because it was something like 4 gigabytes PSD file, so very big file. I've also converted it to 8-bit, and part of the reason is some of the filters we're going to use on this image are only available in 8-bit mode. So if you work in 16-bit, this won't work. You need to work around that by maybe saving a separate file in 8-bit and then bring it back in, which is what I originally did. So let me turn off my lighting effects here, and we'll start to create perhaps one or two from scratch and show you how I go about this. Okay, so to keep things nice and simple, I've just got the background here, the background plates, not the whole image, just to keep it nice and easy. Here's my background. I'm going to duplicate this by Command or Control J. Okay, Command or Control J, and then going to right click and convert this to a smart object. The reason I'm doing that is because the lighting effects filter has been renowned for quite a few years of being quite fiddly and a little bit clunky. I think it's a good word. It's been revamped recently, but it still can be a bit fiddly, and so by converting this to a smart object, if we need to go back in and readjust these settings, we can do that quite easily. Once that's converted to a smart object, we can go to Filter, Render, and then to Lighting Effects. Okay, so once the filter opens, it'll take over the whole screen, and you may find you've got something like this in front of you. And not to worry, this is just a default light, and we always have to have at least one light source on the screen at a time. So whenever you open it up, you will have at least one light source, and like I said, it could be this one. And this is just a spotlight source. There's some other light sources we can use in the lighting effects. The other one is infinite, which is akin to, I've heard it described as like the sun, which is quite a good way of describing it. And we can move this around to create some different effects with that. But the one we're going to use is this point light source, because we want to create these kind of these like floodlights effects. Now this is where it gets a little bit fiddly. Sometimes it'd be quite hard to actually resize these. You need to make this green light go yellow, and once you do, like so, you can scale this to a size that you want. You can also then move it to an area you want, like that above there. Okay, and then we can start to adjust this light to get the effect that we want. So the first setting is intensity. We can change the intensity by using this little inner slider here, like so, or easier still, we can use the slider at the top on the panel here. There's also a color. You can click on that and that will bring up a color swatch, and you can actually color this light. So let's say you want like a warm light source, you can pick out a warm color. I'm actually going to leave this on a middle gray, so it's not really doing too much to affect the image, because this is quite a stylized picture and I don't really want to take this back into my main image with any color effects. I'd rather apply those as I go on, carry on through the image. That's my kind of reasoning on it. So that's the intensity. We can also go into these gloss and metallic settings. We're not going to need to use these really. These are kind of tell you or instructs the lighting effects filter how the light would affect the things actually in the location. So if it's a glossy surface, perhaps lots of glossy paintwork, it may react with that that location different than if it's like a matte surface. And it's same with metallic really. It's the finish of the objects within the scene and how the light is going to reflect off that. That's probably the best way I can describe it. If in doubt, I would just advise to go in and just have a play with these sliders, and if they have any kind of effect that looks good for the image you're creating, then obviously use them. I don't think we need them on this image, so I'm going to leave them at minus 100. Exposure at the top here, this is the exposure for the overall scene, okay, not the lighting effect itself, but the scene in the background here. I'm going to leave that at around 15 for now. Colorize, well, colorize actually, I don't know why it's left in this position up here. It's actually connected to the ambience. Now the ambience is how much this light is affecting the rest of the room, should we say. So it might be having a more of a brighter effect on the rest of the room, or it might be having very little effect. I'm going to leave it up around 36, 35, and the colorize is the color of that light in the room. So it might be quite red, whatever reason, maybe it's a discotheque, or it might be cooler. Okay, again, I'm just going to leave that on a grey, just because I don't really want it to affect the scene. So that is connected to the ambience. So now I can turn my actual light up a little bit, like so, and then turn down my ambience. I don't really want it affecting the rest of the scene particularly. I just want it to be affecting where it is on the balcony there. So that is pretty much it. So once you're ready, you can click OK, and that will load back into Photoshop. We're now back in Photoshop, and here's our lighting. I'm going to rename this layer lighting, and what's happened is obviously the adjustments we've made has affected the whole image. Here's our background, and so I want to bring some of that back, so I can do that quite easily by adding a layer mask. Okay, I'm just going to get a gradient. It's a linear gradient, and I'm going to select the second one, at least in my presets, which is foreground to transparent. Make sure black is in the foreground, and simply add the gradient over the image, like so, which brings back my dance floor. I'm then going to get a brush again with black, and I'm just going to bring back the lighting in this top corner here, like so. So basically all we've done is added that lighting effect just in there. Now I shan't make any more, but what you could do is you could go back in and add another light into the lighting effects, or you could make a new layer and do it over again. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes it's easier to make separate layers for each lighting effect. But that's our first part done, but we're not finished just yet. We're going to add a little bit more effects to this to make it really pop. So we've got our lighting effect, but now we need to add the actual light source. So to do that, I'm going to add a new layer above. You can use the brush tool, or you can use an elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to use the elliptical marquee and just draw a selection out, like so. I thought Photoshop was going to crash then. I'm going to fill that with the paint bucket tool with a white colour. You can use a colour if you want to. I'm just going to use white, like so. Just deselect that. We can then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I just want to blur this quite a bit. Click OK. I think what I might do now is actually make another one of these, add another layer, but a smaller one. Oops, wrong. Make sure you've got the elliptical marquee selected, that would help. Like so. And again, using the paint bucket tool, just click on the middle there. Just deselect that. I'm just going to filter this one again. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, but not so much this time. Something around 9 pixels should do me. Okay, I'm going to change the blend mode for both of these to lighten or screen. Let's try screen. Okay, I'm just going to filter that a bit more. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Probably a bit too much. Okay, somewhere about 24 pixels works well. Command and Control E to combine those two. So there's a light source. We can drop the opacity if you want to. And then to finish off, I'm going to add a little bit of flare to this. So if the camera's pointing towards the light source, chances are we might get a bit of flare into the lens. Now, what you can do is what I've done is to go on the internet and do a search for Photoshop brushes flare, and you'll probably find there's lots of brushes out there. You can download some brushes already being made. Normally they're free, and you can find them for like lighting effects for flare, and that's what I've done. So I'll now get my brush tool and go into my brush presets and find, here they are, some lighting effects flare brushes. So this one looks quite good. Click on that, and on a new layer I'm gonna just have, actually let's just see, there's another one. Where are we? This one is the one, actually the one I wanted, and we can add some nice flare effect to this over the top. So just resize the size you want, and then just click like so, and that's really brought it to life. Now I would also recommend just softening this a little bit, so go to blur, Gaussian blur again, and just drop down that a little bit. Somewhere around there looks good, and that kind of really finishes off the effect. Command and Control E, you can just sort of flatten that, and if it's too much, just bring it back a little bit. But I think that looks pretty good at 100%. So here's before our lighting effects, and here's after. So you can see that in the background that it has really made a difference. It looks very subtle when you just see it like that. You're thinking, oh, it's done a little bit, but not a lot. But actually, when you add the flare and you take it away, you can see that it really has helped sell that lighting effect. So a little bit fiddly in parts, and but it is well worth it when you get the finished image. And obviously, if you're making multiples of these, you can obviously just vary it a little bit so they don't all look identical, because you don't want that. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, something a little bit different, I think, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Cheers for watching.